Join me in painting a beautiful quiet winter morning using watercolor. Here is the sketch needed for this painting. Copy it onto your paper before we start the painting process. I start by wetting the whole paper, but I make sure that I don't wet the roof of the cabin. Using a very light value of Payne's gray, I paint all the areas except the roof of the cabin. I make sure that the top and bottom of the paper are a little higher in values than at the middle, as you see in the video. We are going to create a small slope where the cabin stands. To show that slope, we need a soft shadow on the snow. So I add a value that is slightly higher than the light wash we used earlier. This change in value helps the viewer understand that there is a slope in the foreground. Now I tilt the board and allow the excess pigment to collect near the masking tape. I wipe that extra pigment with a waste cloth. Then I allow the paper to dry completely. Once the paper is dry, we are going to create a separation between the sky and the slope in this second part. The cabin stands above the slope, so I position the masking tape below the wall of the cabin as you see in the video. Next, I wet the paper once again, but only in the sky area. Here also, I want to preserve the white of the roof of the cabin, so I make sure not to wet that area. Using a medium value of Payne's gray, I paint the sky in a gradient wash. The top part stays darker and the value becomes lighter as it moves downward. The separation between the sky and the slope is created in this step, and you will notice it more clearly after finishing this step. Next, using a pointed round brush, I define the edges of the cabin. After that, I tilt the board and allow the excess pigment to get collected near the masking tape, which is then wiped using a waste cloth. Next, I use a tissue to lift the pigment in a circle shape for the hazy sunshine. If the circle is not perfect, you can adjust the edge with a damp brush that has very little water. Be careful here because if the brush has too much water, it will create a cauliflower effect. At this point, the paper is starting to dry. That is, the surface is still damp, which is the right stage for painting the distant pine trees. I use a pointed brush to paint the trees with a light value of the mix of Payne's gray with Prussian blue. I first build trees with light value, then after that I'm going to add few more trees with medium value. I do not use any dark values here because I want everything to be soft and atmospheric in this painting. I speed up this part in the video so that you can see the process clearly and also save your time. I also add one pine tree on the left side just below the sun, which gives a little balance to the composition. When I paint the trees on damp paper, I feel that the paper and the paint are doing most of the work. And my role is simply to place the paint in the right areas. The moisture on the paper softens the edges on its own, and that creates a look of faraway pine trees. Now I allow the paper to dry completely. I'm peeling the masking tape that we used to cover the slope. You can see there is a value difference between the sky and on the slope. The third step is to paint the cabin. For this, I use vermilion hue mixed with Prussian blue to create a dull reddish brown shade. I use this mix to paint the cabin. Since we have hazy sunshine in the scene, I'm not focusing too much on the cast shadow of the cabin. I only add the shadow of the roof on the wall using Payne's gray. Next, I place the masking tape to cover a small section of the snow as you see in the video. Then I wet the top part of the slope. After that, I use Payne's gray to paint near the edge of the slope and create a smooth transition from dark to light. This shift in value gives a natural slope in the foreground. If there is any excess water, now tilt the board and wipe the pigment that collects near the masking tape. In my case, the paper is only damp, so I remove the masking tape before the pigment dries. I use a wet brush and gently soften the edge, and also I'm slightly elevating the board. The water in the brush interacts with the pigment and pulls a little color outward, which creates a slight cauliflower effect. This effect works well here because it gives the look of a road shoulder. Finally, I add the steps leading to the cabin on the slope and also add a few tiny distant birds. For this, I am using a light value of Payne's gray. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more watercolor painting content. See you in another video. Until then, take care and bye bye from Prema.